Because I've been away from reviewing movies for such a long time now, I decided to go ahead and do a mass review of several of the movies that I've seen within the last few months, but haven't been able to review, and some of these are still playing in theaters, while others are about to or have already moved to DVD and streaming, and the first one of these is Deadpool II. In 2016, the Marvel antihero Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, made his awaited debut with vulgarity and super hyper violence packed movie that was both critically acclaimed and a record-breaking box office success. Now he's back with the inevitable sequel to grace us with some more foul-mouthed fun. Deadpool 2 begins more tragically than the original. Wade's girlfriend Vanessa is killed by a hitman, and Deadpool tries to kill himself in his grief, only to discover he can't due to his own power of regeneration. His only choice is to join Colossus and teenage Negasonic Warhead as an X-Men trainee. Deadpool 2 introduces a collection of new characters, including the young mutant Fire Fist, played by Hunt for the Wilder People star Julian Dennison. Fire Fist is the target of a time-traveling assassin, Cable, played by Thanos himself, Josh Brolin. Also introduced in Deadpool 2 is the hero Domino, whose powers are based around luck and chance, and she's portrayed by Zazie Beetz. Now, I had a lot of fun with the original Deadpool, but I didn't think it was as spectacular as most other people did. It wasn't always as funny as it thought it was, and was so bogged down in origin story that the plot felt a little restrained. These minor annoyances are mostly resolved in this sequel, however. I laughed a lot more in Deadpool 2 than I did in the first one, and the plot feels as though it has more breathing room and freedom, which was also a plus. Overall, I liked Deadpool 2 more than I liked Deadpool 1, and was even more surprised by it than the first one. Deadpool 2 does a really good job at humanizing the character of Wade Wilson. By the end of the movie, he's learned a lesson in trust that gives us a sense that he's a little bit different as a person than he was at the beginning. I'm sure most people are going to say the original was the best, but for me, Deadpool 2 has been the best Deadpool movie made so far. The other movie I've seen within the last few months in theaters was also a superhero movie sequel, AntMan and the Wasp. After making two supersized comic book epics within months of each other, it's sometimes good to slow down and be content with the idea of less is more. Ant-Man and the Wasp is now Marvel's third film in the MCU to come out this year, and their 20th film to be released since starting the franchise 10 years ago. The movie follows Lang as he helps Pym and Van Dyne find their wife/mother, who they believe is still alive in the subatomic realm. Ant-Man and the Wasp is a lot like the first Ant-Man, minus the origin story. The movie focuses on a heist-esque plot that includes hunting down their stolen lab that's being sought after by the film's sympathetic antagonist Ghost, played by Hannah John Carmen, as well as a low-level criminal named Sonny Birch, played by Walton Goggins, who plans on selling the tech on the black market. While the two previous Marvel movies of 2018 were major game-changers in the franchise for their grandiose storytelling and relevant themes, this is a movie that settles for a more, no pun intended, scaled-down Marvel movie, and that's just fine. I was very entertained by Ant-Man and the Wasp. I wasn't disappointed by the movie's lack of supersized battle scenes or huge examples of character development, because I didn't go into the movie expecting it. Ant-Man and the Wasp is a movie intended to be a pleasant time at the movies, as well as a kind of palate cleanser while we wait for Infinity War Part 2. Although the plot gets a little busy at times, and it isn't as impactful as Black Panther and Infinity War because of how light it is, that's just fine, because there isn't any rule that says it has to be as epic and supersized as either of those films. And lastly, here is a movie I was glad to be bothered by. Sorry to Bother You is the breakout dark comedy by rapper and music producer Boots Riley, with several bizarre twists and some troubling ideas that gets more fascinating the more you break it down. The movie resembles the kind of magical realism movies that screenwriter and director Charlie Kaufman has become recognized for making, and stars Lakeith Stanfield as a down-on-his-luck guy who gets a job working as a telemarketer. Soon after taking the job, he learns from an older co-worker, played by Danny Glover, that by using his quote-unquote white voice, he makes more of an impression on customers and thus makes more sales. Despite this making up a large portion of the trailer, it only makes up a small fraction of the movie itself, maybe about the first 20 minutes or so. The rest of the movie follows Stanfield as he rises to the top and catches the attention of a cocaine and orgy-obsessed CEO played by Armie Hammer, who's made millions off a company that sells essentially a glorified version of slavery. Workers workers live in prison-like conditions while working factory jobs, and this is presented as a desirable lifestyle despite the workers' obvious discomfort. Even as the movie enters its third act, it continued to find ways to surprise me, especially after a shocking twist that borderline turns the movie into a horror film. Stanfield discovers Hammer's character plans on turning his employees into half-human, half-horse hybrids to make them more efficient workers. On top of that, he proposes paying Stanfield millions of dollars to be turned into one of these creatures so that he can maintain control over them by putting someone who works for him on the inside. Sorry to Bother You is one of the most original and impressive movies I've seen that deftly portrays the oppression of the working class and the manipulation tactics of their oppressors. When Stanfield reveals this scheme to the public, they have a response that leaves him dumbfounded. Rather than being outraged, they praise the inhumanity of Hammer's character, and I could only shake my head at this because of how typical and realistic this response really is. In society right now, we see examples of people in power who do truly despicable things, and yet there's still entire groups who support their decisions and see them as savior figures. Sorry to Bother You is a relevant, funny, and angry allegory that puts the concepts of capitalism and consumerism into the dead center of its satirical crosshairs. It also gives an up-close look at its smaller but hardly any less important ideas such as protest culture, the modern status of social media and reality television, and the factor that race plays in the American job market. Sorry to Bother You does perhaps run a little longer than it needs to, and its attempt at wrapping itself around so many profound ideas makes it feel a little bit top-heavy, but these are minor blemishes on a movie that attacks our majorly flawed world. Thank you so much for watching. I know I've been away from making reviews for several months now. I've just been very busy with real life issues right now, but I'm trying to get back into making reviews more regularly. Until next time, I'm Logan D. McCoy, and this is Real McCoy Reviews.